While still on the Judicial Service Commission interviews for the next position of the Chief Justice, Acting Chief Justice Raymond Zondo, Gauteng Judge President Dunstan Mlambo, and Supreme Court of Appeal President Mandisa Maya will be quizzed over the next 3 days to reflect on the day's proceedings. And as far as the interview of Justice Madlanga is concerned, we're joined by Chris Oxtoby. He's a senior researcher at the Democratic Governance and Rights Unit of the University of Cape Town. Chris, quite a long day in that seat for Judge Madlanga, who really has had the opportunity to answer on a wide range of issues, not least among being his vision for the Constitutional Court and where he thinks he can take it. When you look at the kind of questions he has been asked, are they appropriate for the position he's vying for?
Yes, I would say they are. I think so far the interview's been quite encouraging from that point of view, that the questions have been quite relevant and quite focused, which I have to say has not always been the case with the Judicial Service Commission in the past. But I think the majority of the questions that we've heard today have been quite on point and have given him the opportunity to articulate the kind of leadership role that he sees himself playing if he's appointed to the position.
Of course, the JSC would be conducting these interviews, bearing in mind the hindsight of the experience we had for some of the open vacancies on the Constitutional Court and how that interview process was critiqued and even challenged in court for being all over the place. But it's always come down to whether there's a specific set of questions that those who are being interviewed will need to answer. You now have 4 candidates that are vying for this post. Do you think that there should be set questions that all of them answer so that the process is not seen to be unfair or prejudicial to some of these candidates?
Yes, I do. I think it is important that there is a certain level of consistency of the questions that they're asked. I think it's particularly important in a situation like this where they're all applying for the same position. So it's important to be able to assess their respective skills and abilities against each other. I think the process has tended to go wrong because the JSC hasn't done as much as it could have done to really develop and make public more detailed criteria that it's looking for the appointment. And obviously when one says a set questions, that's not to suggest that the Commission can't adjust questions and ask specific questions that may be relevant to one of the candidates' background and experience. So there is obviously going to be some variation, but I think having some degree of a template, if you like, for them to work off is very important for consistency. So far, the signs are fairly promising just from the first interview. It has a feel from some of the, certainly some of the questions early in the day, that there may be some kind of standardization. The Justice Madlanga was specifically invited to talk at some length about his vision for the judiciary, which sounded as if all the candidates will be given that opportunity. But I think it is an important point because if it's left entirely to the discretion and whims of commissioners, then there's definitely a danger of unfairness to candidates.
One of the questions that was put to Judge Madlanga earlier on in the day had to do with the appointment, particularly based on race, of judges to the Constitutional Court, and he was asked what he felt the right approach effectively is to such a conversation. And the controversy around this is really not something new, but it seems that there needs to be a conversation there around whether or not the Constitutional Court is closed to electing white males.
Yes, I mean, this is a very frequent topic of concern and conversation about judicial appointments, and I think to an extent it's inevitable that we're going to continue to have this debate for a long time because so much needed to change when the Constitution was introduced, and so provisions were included to emphasize the importance of having a diverse judiciary. And over time, as the judiciary has become more and more diverse, it's important to start thinking about what applying that transformation mandate means when the judiciary looks very different now to what it did in the mid-1990s when the Constitution was introduced. I think there's going to be actually a good early litmus test of where we are on this issue now, because just of today the JSC has announced candidates who are going to be interviewed for the next round of constitutional court vacancies in April this year, and that includes 2 white male judges. So they're going to be forced to confront that issue squarely at that point. But I think your question about this needs to be an ongoing conversation, I think is very true. I think it's a flexible point that the JSC is not always going to be applying exactly the same approach with every round for every court, because the situation changes over time. But that is certainly something I think to watch out for with the constitutional court vacancies that are coming up in April.
One of the issues, again, that Judge Madlanga stressed was about the role of the Chief Justice, and he described it not as being a role of a super Secretary General of an organization, and that, while there are administrative responsibilities, they certainly, from my understanding, that there needs to be more of a separation in terms of who is responsible and who does what, and how much of that sits on the desk of the Chief Justice.
Yes, so that was one of the particularly interesting exchanges in the interview so far. And I think it comes from a background where all the other candidates are currently holding formal leadership positions in the judiciary. And Justice Madlanga, although he's a very senior judge of the Constitutional Court, doesn't currently hold an equivalent position as in a formal leadership position in the judiciary. He pushed back quite strongly during his interview against the idea that this meant that he didn't have leadership experience. And I think it's an interesting question. He very much has emphasized the role of the Chief Justice as an intellectual leader, as someone who provides leadership through writing and through judgments. And I think it's an interesting conceptual debate about how we actually understand the role of the Chief Justice. And it'll be interesting to see how that plays out in later interviews. I do think that even sort of accepting the approach that Justice Madlanga has set out, I still think perhaps we need to look closely at the administrative aspects of the Chief Justice's job, because even if other officials are carrying out the day-to-day work, I would have imagined that the Chief Justice would still be giving strategic vision and input into that. So I would certainly expect this to be a topic that is going to be talked about a lot in the remainder of this week as well.
One of the big criticisms for the Constitutional Court has been around the delay of processing cases and how long the turnaround time at the court is, and what are the solutions to managing, this case flow. From the suggestions that you've heard from, this is Judge Madlanga today, are these things that can, that can bring a tangible change, especially perhaps bringing a lot more things online and the rotation of the judges, switching that up a little bit?
Well, it certainly sounds from the account that Justice Madlanga gave of how the court is handling the number of applications for leave to appeal that are coming into it, that a new system that they have relatively recently introduced is making quite a difference to their operations. I mean, for context, for your viewers, this seems to have been an issue where the number of applications that are coming to the Constitutional Court has increased dramatically since around 2013, 2014, when the Constitutional Court's jurisdiction was extended. And I certainly thought that Justice Madlanga made some persuasive points about the kind of internal practices that the court is in the process of putting in place already to improve that. And I think this was an area in his interview where he was particularly strong because he has the inside perspective of having been a long-serving judge on that court for a long time. In the longer term, how effective this is going to be in dealing with this problem, I suppose one will have to wait and see, because the change in strategy that he mentioned has only really been in place for a couple of months.
Chris, just before I let you go, just I suppose on a different side, in the beginning of the interview, Judge Madlanga was speaking about how there's this impression that judges of the Constitutional Court don't work. And he made the point that, you know, he was working throughout Christmas and New Year's, delivering judgments. And, you know, it's just an anecdote, but one certainly gets the sense that these are judges who feel the scrutiny of the public eye, who feel that everything that they do is being watched and more likely is very open to criticism.
And I think also I would add to that I think judges are very conscious of the importance of the job that they're doing. And I think one has to have quite a civic-minded approach to your work to become a judge. And although, you know, judges do earn salaries that are, you know, very good compared to much of society, you would still, if you were in the legal profession just to make money, you would stay in private practice most of the time rather than enter the judiciary. So I think his remarks reflect the fact that judges do take very seriously the public service nature of that job. And are very conscious of needing to do that job the best they can, and of needing to serve the community and the country as best they can. And I mean, I must say, it's from watching these interviews over a long time, it really brings home just what a tough and demanding job it is for judges at all levels.
Senior researcher in the Democratic Governance and Rights Unit at UCT, Chris Oxtoby. Chris, hopefully we'll be able to have a chat at the end of the week when we've seen the other interviews for the remaining candidates.
Super. Thank you.